Ladies and gentlemen, this is your host, Paul Vanderbilt, on the review desk. In our recent episode, we discussed changes made from the source material to the films that would eventually hit the big screen. We would like to discuss today how much change is considered to be enough. There has been change from the source material to the film. This has been done with film adaptations of books, film adaptations of video games. Much too much lore and mythology to compress into a single film, or as it is, a single trilogy at times. How do you feel about changes that are made from the comic book to the feature film?
Well, honestly, it really depends on what effect does it have on the story. If it adds to the story, then I absolutely have no problem with it.
So it needs to build upon that what the writer is trying to tell the audience. Could you give a few examples? Could you please elaborate?
Oh, yes, of course. Take, for instance, Black Panther, which is probably the best example of change made from a comic book to a film adaptation, in that in the comics, Killmonger and T'Challa are not related. They're not related. So you could say, yeah, they're made cousins simply because it's like a Star Wars moment or a ripoff or something. But the thing that makes it so important to the story, Killmonger is of royal blood. He has a right to challenge T'Challa to the throne. He doesn't just come in dropping bombs or usurps him. He earns the throne in the correct manner as suggested by ritual. So when he's on that throne, this is illustrated best when Okoye says to Nakia, I am loyal to that throne no matter who sits on it.
Yes.
So it's not a matter of this guy just comes in and takes over. You have a very hard time pleading a case against him when he took all the right steps to get where he eventually ends up. So that makes sense to change it, that he's royal blood. It also makes it a bit more impactful because T'Challa is now not just facing some random enemy from beyond the borders. This is somebody who has his blood. This is an issue in which his father abandoned a family member for the greater good of Wakanda, according to him at the time anyway. So T'Challa is faced with the reality of this man has been wronged. He's a monster of our own creating. What steps can I eventually take to rectify this and not just throw him under the bus and discard him the way my father did, because he has an argument to stand on.
So you would say that this change lifts up the story more than anything else would have.
Yes, because it also, if you were to flip it, from Killmonger's perspective, this movie is basically Aquaman. You have a member of the royal family who was illegitimately born, who has been abandoned and exiled, and then he comes back for revenge on the people who killed his parent. In this case, it was Killmonger's father, and Aquaman, it was Aquaman's mother. It's not that much different. The only difference is that Ocean Master is the one who wants to go to war, and Aquaman is the one who says, no, I know the surface people. There are other ways to resolve this. Whereas in Black Panther is T'Challa's kind of want to hold Wakanda where it is. And Killmonger is the one who says, we can use our resources to take over the world, build a better world at all costs. And honestly, as a black man, it's hard not to let what Killmonger is saying resonate with you. I'm not saying he's right, but it does resonate. His ideals clashes somewhat with T'Challa's. Even at the end of the film, T'Challa is a bit optimistic. He's saying we can build a better world together as one tribe. Killmonger says something that we have seen in, reality of politics. Who has the power? There's one person who has the power, and there's one person who has the power held over them. They are either the conquerors or the conquered, as Wakabi put it. So his view is a bit more realistic, because you're like, if we were to work together as a tribe the way that T'Challa says it, we wouldn't have wars, we wouldn't have disputes at all. But you have to be prepared to be in charge, or somebody else is going to take that position and be in charge of you. So it's hard not to resonate with have what Killmonger is saying resonate with you. The only part where I draw the line is where he says we will kill our oppressors and their children. I think that's where he lost a lot of people. Yes, because killing the children, why should a child pay for the sins of the father? Well, not even the sins of the father, because not all white people are racist. Not all white people are the enemy. But to him, you know, he generalizes this in all the white people. And his argument is they did that to our ancestors. They oppressed us. They killed us. They killed our children so that we would not grow stronger. So now we're going to do the exact same thing. Which, again, brings up the question, who's right? Because T'Challa's approach is different. But Killmonger's approach is, this is what's been done. This is how, in certain societies, some groups hold dominance. And if that way is the way to get it done, what's to keep us from going that way? Because especially in the black community, we're often told, don't do it the same way your oppressors did it. Don't be that bad. Show them there's a better way. Be the bigger person. But there's a very thin line between being the bigger person and let somebody walk all over you. It's not always that easy. You're not always heard. I mean, we've been protesting the same protests for 60 years, and it's still the same matters of don't kill us, don't disenfranchise us. I'm not going to say that the state of black people's rights is the same as it was in the 60s, but you do still see the same protests. It's a bit more nuanced now. It's not as overt as it was back in the day, but the fact that still the same things are being protested against shows that there has been not that much progress in terms of the institutions. So you understand what Killmonger's going for. I'm not saying that I agree with him. I don't think we should go out and start killing people and pulling them out of their houses simply for being white. That also kind of reflects Magneto's arguments. Magneto is, of course, an enemy of the X-Men. Yes, Magneto is a different Marvel character who is an enemy of the X-Men, and he is a Holocaust survivor. Now, his stance is, I'm going to wipe out all the humans so that they never get a chance to wipe out mutant kind the same way the Nazis did with my people, the Jewish people, because gypsies, black people, homosexuals, pretty much anybody who was not a Nazi was thrown on the pyre. It's an extreme opinion, but if I don't fight them first, they will fight me. If I don't conquer them first, they will conquer me. So the logical, objective thing to do is to conquer them. And again, Killmonger, he has every right to challenge T'Challa. He gains the throne, and he has this plan to go out in the world and start taking over. And as king, who's gonna fight against his policies? So that is one of the better examples of where a change from the comic books actually elevates the story.
Now, why do you think that certain things that don't necessarily contribute to the story are changed from the comic books? There is, for instance, since we talked recently about No Way Home, the Tobey Maguire films, it was brought up once again that his webbing does not come from a web shooter, as it does with Tom Holland and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, respectively. How do you feel about such change?
That change doesn't necessarily elevate the story, but Sam Raimi, the director, did make a very good argument for it. He said that Peter Parker is a high school student, and as brilliant as he is, he doesn't necessarily have the resources to build something as complex as a web shooter. You know, he's not saying that I don't like web shooters, or I think organic web shooters, organic webbing should be is superior. It's my preference. He had a very good argument for it. And in the Tom Holland and Andrew Garfield films, they did have web shooters. Andrew had built his. We see a montage of it being quite difficult to put a proper web shooter together. In terms of Tom Holland, he was given his web shooters, advanced ones anyway, by Tony Stark, but the originals, the prototypes, he built himself, and they work quite well. So this is just another level of suspension of disbelief of, can this character build an advanced piece of technology like that?
Now, you said before that you are willing to believe certain things in comic book films and comic books in general, but not others. Could you elaborate upon this?
Well, yes, it comes back down to Sam Raimi's argument. You're going to tell me that this guy can stick to walls and has a precognitive sense that warns him about danger ensuing. Okay, cool. Belief suspended. But at the same time, how, if you take all that out, how realistic that a 15-year-old boy who has not had his intelligence augmented by his spider abilities, by the way, I want to clarify that in case people think that Peter Parker is a genius because of his spider abilities. This is not the case. He is naturally a genius. How capable would he be to build something like that? In an extreme sense, probably, because we have young kids building robots. They have the tools, they have the resources, but they're not out there building robots with lasers or robots who can complete complex tasks like putting a building together or weaving highly durable materials such as graphene. I understand his argument. I also understand why the other filmmakers chose not to go with organic webbing and just go with the web shooters, because it is part of the character's legacy. But in both cases, I feel that it was an okay change.
So where would you say the change was wholly unnecessary?
One of the films where I feel change was unnecessary was X-Men Origins Wolverine. The fact that Sabretooth and Wolverine were made to be brothers in this film, it doesn't really add to the story. Yeah, you got the conflict, but you can also base it on the fact that they grew up together, they have the same abilities, and there's this respect but also resentment for each other after Victor decides to go his own way. But there was absolutely no reason to turn them into brothers.
Now, I read somewhere that turning them into brothers for the film was based upon the comics. Is this true?
No, this is not true. There is a comic book called Wolverine Origins. A lot of it was used to inspire, or at least write most of the film. Now, where the confusion starts is Wolverine, the caretaker of his father's property, had a son named Dog Logan. Dog Logan was a scrappy young boy, blonde hair, and when Wolverine's powers manifested, he accidentally slashed Dog across the face, giving him 3 distinct scars. Now, when Dog grows into adolescence, when he's in his early 20s, he's tasked by someone to go after Wolverine and eliminate him. Now, at this point, Dog is this huge hulking figure and still has the blonde hair. Now, this led people to believe, hey, he's a big guy, he's got blonde hair. Is he Sabretooth?
So, are they one and the same?
They're not one and the same. Dog Logan, the fact that he did not heal from the 3 scars on his face, that alone should prove that he's not Sabretooth. Because Sabretooth has a healing factor, he would not have the 3 scars on his face. And he would have had his abilities by then, which he had not shown. To clear up the confusion, Marvel actually had a comic where Dog Logan becomes a time traveler and he runs into Sabretooth, establishing that they are not the same person. Now, the reason why they did this in the film, the writer Paul Jenkins, when confronted with theories from fans that is Dog Logan the same person as Sabretooth, he said, look, I never intended Dog Logan to be Sabretooth, but if other writers want to do something with that, they can go ahead. This wouldn't have been a problem if it was handled a bit more tastefully than just, oh, guess what, they're brothers. If there was some story reflecting Dog Logan's transition into Sabretooth, it could have made sense. It could have made sense if it was fleshed out a bit more. But as it stands, there's absolutely no reason for Dog Logan to be the same person as Sabretooth. In film, there's also no reason to have Wolverine and Sabretooth be brothers.
Another change in film is the Man of Steel portrayal of Superman. One theory is that Superman should represent the zeitgeist. Therefore, he should be as cynical and skeptical as we are today, since we live in cynical and skeptical times. What is your take on this, Desmond?
This is something I strongly disagree with.
Why is that?
Superman is not a reflection of the state of our society. Superman is what we should aspire to. They stumble, they will fall, but they one day will join you in the sun. Those are Jor-El's words. To say that Superman is supposed to be, where we are right now as opposed to where we can be. No, Superman has always been that beacon, that goal that we strive to achieve to. And, we're not going to be flying anytime soon. We're not going to gain super strength soon. But in terms of his ideals, that's what we should be striving towards. So I strongly disagree that he should be a reflection of where we are. No, he's always been an example of what we could be if we fully apply ourselves.
Now, has he ever been changed to this extent in the comic books?
There have been attempts, I'm not going to lie. There are storylines where Superman is presented as an angry god. But my absolute favorite Superman story is in Action Comics 775. It's called What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way. What happens is Superman faces off against these heroes called the Elite, and they are a reflection of modern times. They're much more cynical, they're much more skeptical, they're much more extreme in their measures. They believe that, if I'm facing a supervillain, I'm just going to kill the guy. Because if I don't kill him, he's going to go into some prison system with a revolving door. He's going to come back out and he's going to kill somebody. Every target is righteous. And Superman comes into conflict with him because it's like, this is not the way. You're going to brew apathy amongst society because this is how you resolve a problem. You're taking the easiest way out. We should be focusing on preventing this problem. We should be focusing on rehabilitating supervillains where necessary because there are a number of supervillains that have successfully been rehabilitated. So the notion that Superman is timeless, people say he's outdated. This story proved that no, he's just timeless. The ideals that he stands for will never be outdated. This is something that we should always strive for. Trying to change a character into something he's not? No, this is why I don't really like Superman's portrayal in the DCEU. In Man of Steel, he was just moping around. He was broody. He didn't know what to do when, in fact, Superman is the guy who always knows what to do, who tells you what to do when you're in doubt and you're like, you know what, he's right. And he inspires you in such a way that you're like, you know what, he's right. We should be doing this. Let's get hyped. Let's get this done.
Do you think that people should stop making changes from comic books especially to the film entirely?
No. You have to make some changes. As I said with Black Panther, this was a change to elevate a story, but also there's probably no superhero aside from Batman and Superman to an extent whose costume looks the same as it does in the comics. A lot of Marvel characters, Hawkeye, Captain America, Black Widow, well, not Black Widow per se, I'm thinking of Scarlet Witch. If you were to take their comic accurate costumes and apply that to film, they would look ridiculous. They would look ridiculous. Yes, there are some changes that need to be made. You need to update some things, but your change should never be simply for the sake of change. Like, I don't like Superman's costume in Man of Steel with the little wings on the side of his legs. I feel it's unnecessary.
Do you feel that in the film Batman v Superman that the change from Lex Luthor from a established veteran businessman to a young billionaire tech genius, do you feel that was an unnecessary change, or did you feel that that was more in line with modern times?
Well, again, yeah, it was more in line with modern times because we have many young billionaires today in the tech industry in different STEM fields. But the fact of the matter remains, why? Why would you want a younger Lex Luthor who acts more like a petulant child rather than a credible threat to Superman? the portrayal of Lex Luthor in the DCU was terrible. And the fact that he shaves his head simply because he's in jail, yeah, it's a nice visual, but it doesn't really, it's unearned. There was no build up to it, you know. So that was changed simply for the sake of change, but it completely undermines the legacy that her character as Lex Luthor has built up over the decades. There is absolutely no reason to go that far.
Discussing the matter of making characters younger, in terms of the MCU, the character of Ant-Man is currently Scott Lang. Now, what most people don't know is that in the comic books, Hank Pym was the first Ant-Man. Now, the MCU decided to go with Scott Lang. Why do you think this is?
Now, I think the change from Hank to Scott was made for two reasons. One, Scott's a lot more relatable. He is an everyman who made mistakes and paid for it, and he's trying to redeem himself. But also, Hank has a rather dark history in the comics. He's often seen as a wife beater.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was an issue long ago when he was a bit frustrated about the dealings with the Avengers. And his wife, Janet, tried to calm him down, and he smacked her in the face. Now, the writer has cleared up that this was a mistake because what he had wanted to do, he had wanted Hank to lash out and accidentally hit Janet. But the artist understood this as deliberately hitting Janet, and ever since then he's gone down as, you know, he's a wife beater. And I understand that in today's bit more sensitive politics, people would bring that up. People wouldn't want to see Hank as a hero. But again, I feel the fact that Scott is far more relatable for the everyman, that makes more sense. That makes him the better choice.
Now, in terms of the Eternals, this is also a film where much was changed.
Yes, the Eternals unfortunately changed a lot. There isn't a single thing in there that I can say justifies the change. I hope, of course, that in the further phases of the MCU, we'll get to see a bit of an elaboration on the Eternals. But the fact that Cersei is passive, kind of a damsel in distress all the time. Kingo, there wasn't really much said about his movie star status. It was just this one scene. And the posters. Gilgamesh is a bit of a recluse. That was kind of sad. Athena, yeah, her portrayal was pretty okay. She's a warrior amongst them. But yeah, Cersei especially, there was absolutely no need to make her more of an introvert than what she is. Cersei is really out there. She's like the extrovert's extrovert. I don't know if they're going to try to get her out of her shell more and get her to that point. I hope so. But Eternals changed a lot. They changed a lot.
Now, upon the matter of the Celestials and the Eternals, it was said that life needs to be sacrificed to build new energy sources for new planets that will be shaped and populated by the Celestials. Is this the same in the comics?
In the comics, there is an element of sacrifice. The Eternals are brought back by a machine that is designed to reconstitute their bodies every time they're demised. But later on, the Eternals find out that for every time they return to life, a human is sacrificed because the machine needs some energy source. And so they kind of work that into the story that by destroying the planet, you wake up, you create a new celestial. It's a bit muddied, but yeah, it kind of comes down to the same thing.
Final verdict?
I feel if it's something that you can completely remove from the story and it's the same story, basically, what's the point?
Yes, indeed.
So I look forward to more of the films, and I hope that the coming changes are really just to elevate the story and not make it completely unrecognizable from the source material. I think that's the takeaway. Your character can change, your story can change, but don't make them unrecognizable from who they are in the comics.
Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it. Change should be to elevate the status of the art in question. We thank you for listening in on this episode. We will see you next time on what promises to be a very special episode, for we will be traveling to the land of Australia Tune in next time on the review desk. Until then, goodbye, and good fortune to you all.